Finally, the final chapter in this multi-year journey to discover what Pokemon of which type are better than absolutely kicking other Pokemon to the curb. For now, if things change, which they inevitably will, we'll do this again. But not for a long time, I hope. The game has gone through DLC since we started this list, and the Smogon singles meta has gone through shift after shift after shift. Let's see who our best are thus far. Obviously, no Megas, Z-moves, G-Max, or Super Legendaries, and it's gotta be obtainable in Gen 9. So with that said, let's begin. Honorable mentions. Clodsire is an incredibly solid special tank. Donphan is Beta Great Tusk, and Sandy Shocks is an excellent hazard lead that can both pivot out and do a lot of damage. It's so weird to me that Excadrill isn't higher, but in Excadrill's defense, it's kind of hard to really compete with some of the absolute nonsense that's being tossed around in the OU tier proper. Its Moldbreaker spinner set is completely outdone by two other rapid spinners, one being of the exact same type as it. And the Sand Rush Sweeper set falters when you realize that even after his Swords Dance, it still can't KO Alola, Gliscor, Ting-Lu, Zamazenta, and Dondozo, who just doesn't care. Combine this with the reliance on T-Tar, who is also struggling in OU proper? Yeah, they're gonna be hanging around UU, where they are both absolutely fantastic and just as scary as they always were. Recommended Terra? Flying, because it lets you dodge ground stab, and against fighting types, it's pretty useful. Regular Ursaluna is a particularly fascinating breaker. Its Flame Orb Guts boosted facade has some of the highest damage dealing threshold in the game, and its natural bulk and access to Drain Punch lets it stick around for a bit longer than you'd expect it to. It's a problem that has to be dealt with quick with aggressive play for the sole purpose of taking it out. However, its strongest set is also its biggest weakness. With hazards everywhere and the 6% every turn it takes from a burn that takes a turn to set up, Ursaluna will find itself being worn down over the course of a game sometimes. And given how common Air Balloon Goldango is, especially with its ability to keep those hazards up at all times, Ursaluna has a bit of trouble coming in and getting going. But make no mistake, if you specifically want to kill stall, it's pretty good for the job. And of course, all this goes without saying, it's very much the mascot of Trick Room. Recommended Terra? Normal to enhance your stab, or Ghost to get away from all your weaknesses, especially fighting. Garchomp is a Pokemon that was hanging on by a thread this generation, sadly. Which is kind of what happens when, instead of buffs that would help it keep up with the ever-growing offensive power of Gen 9, you give it spikes. And at this point, it's not even like giving Garchomp Dragon Dance would break the game. They gave it to Roaring Moon, who, may I add, is faster and stronger and gets to spam Terra Flying acrobatics. Look, the Stealth Rocks, Spikes, Earthquake, and Dragon Tail defensive set is all fine and dandy and all, if you forget that there's just a better version of that we'll be getting to. Terra Ghost Hazard Chomp is like perfectly okay, with what keeps it apart from Ting-Lu being its rough skin ability and better use of Rocky Helmet to always be enforcing more chip. It just doesn't do it for me. Where Garchomp excels is with the Swords Dance and Loaded Dice Scale Shot set, with Earthquake and Iron Head as its last two options, and with Terra Steel to turn the tables on Enamorus. The issue with this sweeper set is not only do Ogerpon and Roaring Moon exist, who are also better sweepers, but the tanks in OU who can survive everything Excadrill throws at them can also withstand offensive Garchomp's assault. With that said, it at least made sure to get banned from UU, and very quickly. So, remember that Hazard Chomp guy who I said there was a better version of? Well, yeah, that's what this slot is dedicated to. Ting-Lu is just a better, more potent Hazard Chomp. Ruination is more consistent than Garchomp's Earthquake with Vessel of Ruin and its defensive stats. It has the ability to take hits more consistently, which allows it to come in more frequently and potentially re-establish hazards. It's got Stealth Rocks, Spikes, Earthquake, Whirlwind, and HP that's so big that leftovers feels fantastic to hold. Super effective moves feel like they bounce off this guy. He's a staunch wall that has moves that can force chip on the entire tier, and unlike Garchomp, there is just about nothing in OU that one-hit KOs him. Recommended Terra, Ghost. Block Rapid Spin. The Rapid Spin was successfully blocked, and now Iron Treads is currently discussing its next move with itself. Well, given that Ting Lu has Terra Ghosted, it has a few options. It can use Volt Switch to safely pivot into something more reliable. Perhaps it can set up Stealth Rocks and then spam Steel Beam until it dies so it can have hazards up and get into a better Mon. Perhaps it can just use Knockoff. Perhaps it's some mix of all these. Iron Treads is a Swiss Army knife of utility that you really never know what set it's gonna be until you fight it, unless you're very good at analyzing a team and being able to deductively pinpoint its set. It could be a Booster Speed Suicide Lead, Assault Vest Bulky, fast with heavy duty boots, or, in rare cases, it can use its offensive kit to actually threaten damage outside of rocks before going out. But this is rare for a reason. It's very good utility first, and everything else second, but it's damn good at it. Gliscor is a flying type. Oh god. Well, in that case, since we just did this one, I can at the very least make this shorter for the sake of everyone's time. Since there's nothing new about Gliscor, ahem. Spikes, Rocks, Protect, U-Turn, Earthquake, Toxic, Poison Heal, and it's very good at sitting there for prolonged periods of time. Terra Water is absolutely insane on it. This is a really good defensive Pokemon. Now we can move on to something with a bit more variety. Landorus T has variety, and is also a flying type. And I already talked about the special set with Grass Knot and Earth Power, the Rocks and U-Turn set. So I would like to talk more about its more offensively oriented sets rather than telling you what you already know. While niche and existed for all of one Blunder video, Nasty Plot Landorus Therian is technically a feasible option. With that base 145 attack, Swords Dance is very feasible. Neither feel the same without Rock Polish though. And then there's the obvious Choice Scarf and Choice Band set that hits you hard with its monstrous attacking power and actually puts its offensive stats to good use. This Pokemon can be played in a myriad of ways, and not just as standard. Recommended Terra? I would say Ghost or Water, really. Great Tusk is the single best thing to happen to Gen 9 OU, hands down. And I will not take any other sentiment, comment, or disagreement. Now, what's so great about it? Pretty much everything. Base 131 to its attack and defense and 87 speed, and then 115 HP make it perfectly balanced on the physical side, while its 53 special defense gives it an exploitable weakness. Not only that, but its coverage is immaculate. Ice Spinner, Close Combat, Headlong Rush, Body Press, Head Smash, Supercell Slam, and Temper Flare. Rapid Spin and Knockoff are excellent utility. It can set rocks, and it can run any set. Booster Speed Bulk Up Sweeper, Physical Defense Leftovers, Booster Energy Attack Breaker, or Lord knows what else. It has the capability to slot into any and every team it needs to. And all the while, despite all this variety, the ways to defeat it are all pretty similar, which means it's both versatile, but never broken. It holds Gen 9 OU together, and is what keeps Dango and King Gambit from literally ruining the tier. Recommended Terra? Pretty much whatever your team needs. Probably Steel to beat Fairy, but I'd keep that on the down low. Maybe I'm wrong and it should be number 1, but Ursaluna Blood Moon is about as good as it always is. I have gone on record to say this is one of the best Pokemon ever made, and for good reasons. Its ability to ever be swapped in on by anything short of the finest special walls is something that had it completely banned. With its natural bulk and power, it beat everything in the tier into the ground with its Blood Moons. Blood Moon, Earth Power, Calm Mind, and Moonlight were the standard, but stuff like Vacuum Wave liked to join the mix to give this son of a gun priority, just in case. A sacrifice typically has to be made when Ursa hits the field, as thanks to Mind's Eye, there is no true safe switch-in short of Blissey. Recommended Terra, Poison to not get Toxic stalled. And I technically didn't talk about him in the flying video, but that's because Landorus in that video would have shared the same slot as Landorus? Yeah, I think Landorus Incarnate is as good as we're getting for ground types. While it isn't as powerful as the bear, it is still quite the force to be reckoned with. I don't think it was even allowed in OU on debut. The OU player base knew better than to let it in. The OU player base knew better than to let it in. Despite the fact that Pokemon like Roaring Moon, Enamorus, Walking Wake, and Zamazenta outspeed it, if Landorus Incarnate was in the tier, it would tear the metagame apart. The three best Pokemon in the tier, Goldango, Kingambit, and Great Tusk, would be unable to hit the field with him around. Otherwise, they would be pelted to death by Life Orb Sheer Force boosted Earth powers. And the Pokemon that are faster than it don't want to be caught switching in, lest they take damage, or worse, just die outright. And the defensive Pokemon in the tier, Mola, Glowking, Garganacl, Pecharunt, Dondozo, Clefable, things not named Blissey, Corviknight, and Araquanid, yeah, they're all gonna get actually mopped by this Mon with a combination of Earth Power, Sludge Wave, Grass Snot, and either U-Turn or Nasty Plot. This dude is oppressive. And this isn't accounting for Araquanid webs. Recommended Terra? Water? Ground? Poison? Grass? I couldn't tell you. And with that, we can put the ranking Pokemon of each type to rest. Presumably. Not unless future me has some devious plans for present me. So, with the types officially covered in detail on who is good and who isn't, I think I want to break from talking about types in Pokemon. I think we need to move on to new horizons, new destinations, new journeys. Maybe perhaps we can do something else. I don't know. I'll figure it out. I got plenty of Miltanks on the farm.